Well, finally, in order to finish with this organizational support of the implementation of a strategy, now we have to analyze the organizational culture. Well, what's the organizational culture? Culture is a pattern of shared basic assumptions that the group learned as it solved its problems of external adaptation and internal integration that has worked well enough to be considered valid and therefore to be taught to new members as the correct way to perceive, think, and feel in relation to those problems. This definition has been given by Shane, and Shane is the main academic studying organizational culture. So it's a pattern of values, assumptions, and ideas of how to deal with problems of external adaptation and internal integration. So culture could be just said as being shared values, shared beliefs, shared uses of people inside an organization. Okay? Why should we care about culture? Well, it's a part of the organizational support, and it can make the implementation of the strategy very easy or tremendously difficult. Well, let me tell you some things about the culture. First of all, the culture is a part of the identity of the firm. There are some organizations where when you enter the organization and when you have a relationship with the organization, you feel that you are inside that organization. It's clear that that organization has got a culture, has got some values which are shared by all the people who are working there. Well, it's part of the identity of the firm. It's informal, it's invisible, but you can see it through the behaviors of people, through the assumptions of people, even through how people talk, okay? So it's clearly present. Look, the culture, it takes years to create a culture or to change a culture, so it's stable, it tends to prevail. This is going to be important because if we need to change the culture, it's not going to be easy, okay? And the culture influences people's attitudes and behaviors. So if someone enters an organization being brand new, this person is going to be immediately influenced by the culture. And in some period of time, this person is going to behave nearly exactly in the same way. Well, let me tell you that I have had some friends when I was a student, okay, who joined an organization. And look, after some years, these students ceased to go out with us, with the friends, and started to go out with their work colleagues. They forgot about why? Because the culture was so strong, it created such an important tie between people, okay, that in fact they ceased, they closed the relationship with some other people from outside the organization, and their entire world was that organization. Well, this obviously can be exaggerated, but a strong culture can really influence the behaviors of people inside an organization. A strong organizational culture can increase the cohesiveness in the behavior of people in an organization, so it can be a good coordination mechanism, okay? It can also reinforce formal rules and internal power because we are doing these things because we have to do it, because we have been ordered, but also it's part of the culture of the firm, okay? And also it reinforces the structure of the firm. Structure and culture are mutually inter-influenced. I mean, the structure of the company can influence the culture, and the culture of the company can influence the structure. Normally they finish fitting, okay? So, let me tell you three things. First of all, having a strong culture is a need, but it does not grant success. Guess why? Yes, if you have got a strong culture, but the strong culture you have got does not fit the strategy or does not fit the environment or something like that, this is not going to create a great performance. But on the other hand, a strong culture, adequate for the circumstances of the organization, will help a lot. Okay? So, a strong culture can help, but also might create problems. A weak culture is normally a problem because it means that the people of an organization are not really working cohesively. They have no shared values. Okay, so there's no commitment, no internal commitment. They are part of the organization as they could be part of anything else. Finally, the culture ideally should be aligned with other variables, should be aligned with a structure, with a strategy, with the leadership style, and so on. And I am going to tell you that these variables influence the culture, obviously. But what happens if you change the leadership? What happens if you change the strategy? Okay, they will cease to fit the culture, so you will have to do something about that. Well, which kind of factors will influence the culture of a company? There are three main groups of factors. First of all, external factors. External factors we mean from the outside of the organization. Okay? The national culture. The national culture or the regional culture will clearly influence organizations. Have you seen some organizations that are clearly German, that are clearly Spanish, some companies which clearly belong to the country where they were born? Okay, I put here the case of IKEA. Look at the colors of IKEA. IKEA is Swedish. And when you get into IKEA, you are breathing Sweden. Okay? It's clearly Swedish. Also, the industry culture can influence you. What's the meaning of this? Well, there are companies which clearly are, for instance, the culture of the big four companies, the big four, Deloitte, KPMG, PwC, and EY, the culture is similar. They are clearly audit and consultory companies, okay? And finally, professional culture. Clearly, a company which is made mainly by lawyers has got clearly a different culture, but than when the composition of the company is mainly engineers. Clearly, okay. So these are the external factors that influence the culture of a company. Then there are some historical factors. Historical factors means the past. Do you know who is that man? Yes, Walt Disney. Look. Yes, past things of a company influence the current culture of the company. As what Disney said, da 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 da. As what Disney did, da 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 da. Okay, so the founders, previous managers, some organizational references. This person who was in our organization was not a manager, but used to say da 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 da. Okay, look, for instance, Paulo Futre. Paulo Futre has not been a manager of Atlético de Madrid. Well, he's clearly an organizational reference of Atlético de Madrid and was not a manager, was just a player, was just an employee. Previous crisis. Well, some 10 years ago we had this problem and we got over it doing this, that. This will influence the culture of a company. Also, old stories, myths about the company of the past of the company. Okay, so clearly the past of a company influences the present culture. And finally, internal factors. Well, you see Juan Roig here. Obviously, Juan Roig, the values of Juan Roig, the ideas of Juan Roig clearly influence the culture of Mercadona. So obviously, the top managers, the current leaders, the strategy, the structure, and the human resources management style, all of this stuff will influence the current culture of a company. Okay, so the thing is that what happens if the culture and the strategy do not exactly fit? Okay, so what happens if we have to change the strategy and the new strategy does not fit with the culture? Well, let me tell you, first of all, it depends on the degree of misfit and it depends on the importance of the strategy. What happens if the strategy is not important at all and we can do something else? Well, we will do something else. But if the strategy, the change of the strategy is critical and we have to do that, we have to do that. On the other hand, if the difference between the cultural values and what we need for the strategy is just slight, normally we will make some slight changes. But if the difference is enormous, well, it's going to be difficult. What can we do in case of misfit? Okay, we have got a new strategy that doesn't fit the culture. What can we do? First of all, we can ignore the culture. We need to do this strategy. I don't mind the culture. I don't mind the values. I am going to do this. Well, normally we are going to do that, but this is a potential source of conflict. I mean, you will have a new strategy with an old culture, with old values of people and so on. People are not going to be committed to the new strategy. This is going to be a problem. Another possibility, changing the strategy so it fits the culture. Well, the culture is so strong that you don't consider that the strategy, that this new strategy is going to fit the culture. So you change the strategy, you choose a second best. Do you remember the acceptability criteria? Yes. Well, our new strategy is acceptable for the members of the organization. A third possibility, dealing with cultural problems along the implementation. I mean, okay, this is going to be our strategy. Is our strategy very different from the values of the company? No, there are some mismatches, but slight mismatches. What am I going to do? Well, I am going to put the strategy into practice, and along the process, I am going to deal with the potential problems that may arise. Okay? And finally, there's a possibility of doing something called cultural change. Okay, my new strategy doesn't fit the culture. I have to change the culture. Well, the case for cultural change is going to be easier or more difficult depending on some factors. Well, first of all, the age of the organization. If the organization is really young, normally there's not a strong culture, changing the culture will be easy. The life cycle, also same thing. There are some parts of the life cycle when changing the culture is easier. In the introduction, clearly. And in the decline, also clearly, because all the people of the company feel the decline and they feel that they have to change. Also the size. It's easier to change the culture of a small company than of a big company. The strength of a culture. It's easier to change a weaker culture. The presence of subcultures, well, this can be a problem. If there are different subcultures inside an organization, well, imagine a big organization. There's a main culture of the firm, but there's a culture of the engineers of the company, there's a culture of the analysts of the company, there's a subculture. Okay, see, these subcultures can make it more difficult because they can create resistance to change. Okay. Also, if there is a change in the management or a leadership or a critical situation of the company, if you change the management, normally it's going to be easier to change the culture. Why? Because people see it. I mean, well, the company has got a change in the CEO, in the chief executive officer. Well, people can feel that new values are going to be promoted, so there are going to be changes. Well, let me tell you something. When we say cultural change, we cannot change the culture. We cannot say, okay, your values were this. Now assume these new values. No, it's impossible. What we can do is we can change the contextual factors, the previous ones that we have said, the external, the internal, and the historical. We can change these contextual factors that influence the company, but we cannot change the culture itself. No. New culture. No, it's not like that. Okay? How do we change a culture? Well, first of all, we identify the values of the current cultures. Then we say which are the desired ones for the new strategy. And we evaluate which is the gap. And we try to make the change. Okay? And let me tell you one more thing. Remember that culture tends to stay. It's difficult to change a culture. Okay? You are going to change some contextual factors, so in the end culture will change, but it's going to be in the long run. Culture tends to stay. How can we carry out a cultural change? Please remember that we have to influence these contextual factors. First of all, can we influence external factors? Not easily. Normally not. What's the meaning of this? Well, if your organization is mainly made of engineers, they are going to be engineers. If it's mainly made of Spanish people, they are Spanish. So it's really difficult to change external factors. You can try to reduce their importance, reduce their effect. Well, modifying historical facts. The thing is that maybe you are thinking, can you change the past? Well, have you read 1984? 1984 is a brilliant George Orwell novel. I strongly recommend you. And one of the things is that there were three superpowers: Eurasia, Eastasia, and Oceania, and they were fighting one and allied with the other. But in a blow, okay, they changed the alliance and they started fighting the other and changing the ally to the other. So we are fighting Eurasia, we have always been fighting Eurasia, and we are allied with Eastasia. And the big brother decided, no, it's going to be the opposite from now on. Okay, we are fighting Eastasia, we have always been fighting Eastasia. So let me tell you that the past cannot be changed, but we can change how we perceive the past. how do we do it in organizational culture? Okay, we cannot change the past, but we can stress some other ideas, some other stories, when we say, okay, our founder used to say this, that. Walt Disney used to say this, that. Okay, we can create new stories about Walt Disney. Normally people was not there to know. So we can say, okay, as Walt Disney said, da 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 da. Who can check it? No one. Okay, also, if a given previous manager was influencing our company, we can say that a new old manager is influencing. For instance, in General Electric, there have been many important managers in the past. We can change the influence from one to another. Another thing, changing the leadership. A new leader normally has got an enormous influence in the organization. And normally these new leaders are promoting new values for the company. And they normally will use a communication policy to promote this new value. Well, this man, do you know this man? Is Satya Nadella, the current Chief Executive Officer of Microsoft. The previous one was Steve Ballmer. Well, one of the first things done by Satya Nadella was creating an alliance to be working with Apple. You know that before Satya Nadella, with Steve Ballmer and so on, having Office things and devices working in Apple and related with Apple was really difficult. Satya Nadella said, okay, no. We have to work together. We need to get alliances. So the policy changed dramatically. This clearly inspires new values inside a company. This change is telling the people, no. It's not about looking for people to fight against. No. We need to get new allies. And finally, some other changes in internal factors. For instance, if we change the organizational structure, this normally will break teams and break dynamics so that you can use that to create new cultural values. Also, human resources policies can influence heavily the changes. Okay, the changes in attraction policies, in development process, and in retention policies. So we can clearly change the internal factors. We also change the strategy. We change the strategy, can change the structure, can change the management, can change human resources. We can change the past. We cannot change the past, but we can change the way we perceive the past. And finally, it's not easy to change external factors, but we can reduce their influence, or we can mix it up with some new people. Imagine there's a majority of engineers. Well, I attract new people who are not engineers, so we can mix it up together. Okay, and well, this is the end of this lesson 7. Hope you liked it.